Welcome to Anxiety Month. I'm chatting with Hannah Charman. Hannah, tell us what you do and all about you.
So I am a medical herbalist who specialises in menopause, particularly menopause after cancer for those ladies who can't take HRT. And I also do some health coaching and some advanced hypnotherapy. So we're basically working on everything at once, and the symptoms have nowhere left to hide.
Love it. Just quickly, for anybody who's not sure, a quick insight into what medical herbalism is.
So everywhere around the world, wherever you're watching this from, there will be a local tradition of herbal medicine use native to where you live. So most of us have heard of sort of Chinese medicine or perhaps Ayurvedic medicine, but there is also a Western tradition of herbal medicine which comes from the Middle East. And so medical herbalists are trained for 4 to 5 years in how to assess patients properly, taking into account all the different health issues they might have and all the different medications they might be taking. And then we prescribe medicinal herbs for them in combination, depending on what they need at the time. So everything's personalized and tailor-made.
Love it. So this month we're talking about anxiety. I bet you see loads of that coming up in your clinic.
Yeah, I do. And actually lots of women who have never had anxiety before and don't always twig that it might be perimenopause related. Which is quite interesting to see, particularly in younger women as well, sort of in their 30s, because we don't think of menopause in younger women because it's not as common, but it does obviously still happen. And when someone says, I don't know what's happening, I've never had anxiety in my life and my life is actually going really quite well at the moment, I've got nothing to be anxious about, and then we start looking at whether hormones might be part of that.
And it's one of the earlier symptoms as well, isn't it, for a lot of people that, you know, this anxiety comes from seemingly from out of nowhere. And I mean, for a lot of women, it's really crippling.
It is. I mean, in some ways, it's easier for women who have had ongoing problems with anxiety because they learn coping mechanisms to carry on with their everyday life. So it's not such a shock to them. But for women who've never had to deal with it before, it's quite a thing, and can literally come on in overnight. They can wake up one morning full of dread and not know why, but it's also manifests in different ways. So even before I fell off the horse, I was starting to get anxious around horses. I've heard people say they're fine until they have to go to their German lesson, and it's just the German lesson that's the problem, or just night driving that's the problem, and everything else is okay. Or it can be generalized anxiety where you're just frightened of everything. So yeah, it's quite crippling.
Yeah, and I mean, I see it in the Facebook group a lot, people who are really terrified to drive any longer, and not just night driving, but sort of a general anxiety around all things driving or around specific work situations. And I mean, it can really impact life across the board, can't it?
Yeah, totally. And sometimes there are elements of childhood trauma resurfacing as well, particularly when the anxiety is very severe. A lot of women don't realize that can happen. And actually, certainly in my practice this year, since Christmas, I've seen it a lot in my patients where we go really deep. We do a really deep dive in the first consultation, and sometimes it doesn't quite make sense. And then we start looking into things like, could it be childhood trauma? And you'll see patterns very often where, they say, right, I was 51 last year and that's when my symptoms started, completely out of the blue. And then we go on to talk about her mother, who by coincidence also began to get these sorts of problems surfacing at the age of 51 as well. And you see these patterns running down through the family. So menopause is basically a mirror image of adolescence. So if you look at the physiology of what the hormones are doing, they ramp up in adolescence and then they go back down in the same order in menopause. So our brain is kind of making its way more back towards its childlike state, which is interesting because often women will start to go back to childhood hobbies that they might have had, or move back to places that they really loved in their childhood. And we do these sort of childlike things, and one of the less happy side effects of that, if you like, is that you can get childhood traumas re-triggering. So Yeah, sometimes we need to look a bit deeper than just the hormones.
Yeah. So given that you use the medical herbs, but also hypnotherapy, presumably you can really help people to, properly sort
Really
of
nail it. Yeah,
dig down and
absolutely.
root it out kind of thing.
Yeah, we just need to work out what's really going on first and which tools would be best to use for that. So if it looks like it might be something like childhood trauma resurfacing, then we can probably go with hypnotherapy as a means of, obviously, if something really awful's happened in childhood, we're not necessarily ever going to overcome that completely, but we can learn ways of taking the heat out of the situation using hypnosis. Sometimes it's nothing to do with that. Sometimes there's, that's not part of it at all, and it is more physiological. In which case we'd be looking at using herbs alongside diet and lifestyle changes. There are even sort of genetic anomalies, which mean, like, there's one called pyroluria, which is more common in people with mental health problems. So the more severe the mental health problem, the more common it is. So about 50% of schizophrenics have it. And then about 25% of people who have long-term anxiety and depression have it. And it's basically a genetic anomaly where you don't metabolize zinc and vitamin B6 properly. So you need tons of those two nutrients. And if you supplement to the right levels, then you no longer have a problem with your anxiety.
Wow, I never knew that. So can you get tested for that?
Yeah, it's a urine test you can get done. Just Google pyroluria tests, and they send you a kit out to your home, and then you just send the sample back, and they'll tell you whether you've got pyrols in your urine and you need to supplement.
I'm going to just write down roughly how I think we've spelled that. That's fine.
Pyroluria. But
That's what I've
they
written.
say it's sort of, so particularly in women where they've got all female siblings.
Yeah.
And often the symptoms will manifest in teenage years and then continue into adulthood. So I've known a couple of people who have tested positive for it,
Wow.
and had their high dose of zinc and B6 and felt fine.
Wow.
So yes, things like that. And then we can also obviously use the herbs. So because we're using the herbs in combination, we can work on different areas at the same time. So we can work on calming down the crazy fluctuations in hormones. We can work on the nervous system using a class of herbs called nervines, which have a direct action on the nervous system. So the ones you might have heard of would be things like St. John's wort, chamomile, lavender, valerian, lemon balm, those sorts of things. And we can use them to stimulate or relax the nervous system depending on what's needed. And then we also use a different class called adaptogens, which most people nowadays have heard of adaptogens. And they have a different effect. So we're not using them usually to directly calm ourselves down or wake ourselves up, but they help us out of our stress response, even if the stressful situation is still ongoing. So they work in tandem really with the nervines, and they have a more generic kind of tonic effect, and help us out of our stress response. So the stress might still be there, but it's not having such a big effect on the body.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's clever stuff.
It is. It really is. And obviously, because you're tailoring it to each person, they're actually getting exactly the doses they want, which is the problem with kind of sort of mainstream medicine, as it were, is that there's the dose. There you are. Based on a survey of 1,000,001 people, we've found an average, and take the average and you'll be fine.
Yeah. And until recently, the 1,000,001 people would have been men. Actually.
Yes. Yes, they would.
Which doesn't really help us ladies too much.
Not at all.
Yeah. Mainstream medicine obviously has its place, and there are times when women genuinely do need it, and it is definitely the way to go. But it is a one size fits all. There is a lot of trial and error with getting dosages right and brands right and so on. And that's not for everyone. So with the herbal medicine, it's really versatile. And we can say in the first consultation, if you've got 20 different symptoms going on, we can say, okay, where do you want to start? Which symptom do you want to focus on first? And then build the prescription around that. And then as time goes by and that one gets better, we can start to focus on the others.
Yeah.
So it puts you back in control of your own body and your own treatment, really.
which is awesome.
Yeah.
So for people who, for whatever reason, aren't able to come and have an appointment with you right now, what would be things that you could suggest that people could do to help their anxiety until they can sort of take more decisive action?
Well, in any case, I always say start with self-care. Make sure you've got the basics that anyone with anxiety would need to have in their daily routine and daily diet. So it's, have you got a physical outlet for your anxiety? Have you got some daily activity and exercise going on? And I don't mean like go and torture yourself in the gym if you really hate going to the gym, but go do something that you enjoy, preferably with other people and preferably outdoors. Make sure you're eating well, because you know, physical and mental health, you can't really separate. It's all one. So make sure you're using lots of good nutrients for your nervous system and for your brain. Lots of B vitamins, herbs that contain B vitamins, and foods that contain B vitamins, and magnesium as well. And you may need to supplement magnesium because it's the second most common nutritional deficiency. So most of us are magnesium deficient, and it can make quite a big difference actually to your mood and to helping you calm down. So you can either take that as a supplement, or you can have hot Epsom salts baths or foot baths and get your magnesium in that way. And making sure you sleep and making sure that you're doing some deep relaxation, perhaps using one of the apps like Headspace or Calm is really helpful as well. So if you've done all of that and you're still not feeling any better, I think then it's time to explore the herbs, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. Thank you so much, Hannah.
No problem. Lovely. I will see you again next month. What are we talking about next month?
Insomnia.
Oh, good.
Lots to talk about.
Yeah, I'm quite good at having insomnia myself, actually. So it's quite a good topic to go for me. So yeah.
Awesome.
Lovely. Thank you.
Thank you.
See you soon. Bye.